I Hate the News is the weekly news bulletin from I Hate Politics podcast, a show about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. It's September 2nd, 2025. A Trump-appointed federal judge dismisses the administration's lawsuit against the entire bench of the Federal District Court of Maryland. The city of Baltimore wins a $62 million jury award against the largest ghost gun dealer in the state. The Maryland Public Service Commission, the state's utilities regulator, looks likely to propose a longer period of review for a controversial high-voltage power transmission line between Baltimore and Frederick called Piedmont Reliability Project. In Northern Virginia, a project connecting 68 rain gauges seeks to improve rescue operations and stormwater planning, and more. Stay with us.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by the Political Science Program at UMBC Shady Grove, where you'll learn a strong foundation in public policy, pre-law, and international affairs for an impactful career in a number of essential areas. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
What's with you today? What's with today? Gotta tell her I love her by one thing.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning, precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from Dear Daria, a Washington, D.C. power pop indie rock band. Mary Jo Mattea on vocals, guitar, and keys. Joshua Hunter on guitar. Eamon Donnelly on bass, and Dan ABH on drums. You can find their music at deardariaband.com.
Damn the man who saved the empire. Damn the man who saved the empire. Damn the man who saved the empire. Damn the man who saved the
Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is increasingly in a tough spot as the Trump administration takes over more of her city. Last week, it was Union Station. And she tries to find balance between angering the president and angering district residents who are looking to her to show resistance. At a press conference last Thursday, this is the line she walked.
Having more federal law enforcement officers on the street. We think having more stops that got to illegal guns has helped. We think that there's more accountability in the system, or at least perceived accountability in the system, that is driving down illegal behavior. We know that we have had fewer gun crimes, fewer homicides, and we have experienced an extreme reduction in carjackings. What we know is not working is a break in trust between police and community, especially with new federal partners in our community. We know having masked ICE agents in the community has not worked, and National Guards from other states has not been an efficient use of those resources. What's still needed is, in the city, we're going to continue to need more police. We continue to need more prosecutors, more judges, more effective prevention programs, and we need to ensure local control.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration's extraordinary lawsuit against the entire bench of federal judges in the District Court of Maryland was dismissed by a Trump-appointed federal judge, who normally sits in Roanoke, Virginia, Thomas Cullen. Since the entire Maryland bench was party to the lawsuit, they recused and Cullen presided. Walter Olson is a senior fellow and legal expert at the Libertarian Cato Institute.
Cullen said that this case fails on several very major grounds, one of which is that there is no cause of action for them to use. Even if there were a cause of action, it would fail on the grounds of both sovereign immunity, can't sue the government for that, and judicial immunity. Even if you could sue the government, you can't sue judges. He did say that a bunch of stray cases that the Trump people had been pointing to, saying, look, here was a suit against judges, or here was a suit over standing orders, which are the rules by which judges run their courts. And he addressed those and distinguished them and said, no, they are not authority for filing here. And that's important because it was that kind of thicket that was most likely to make people think, well, gee, maybe there's some sort of case here. He brings up both the tremendously disruptive and personally threatening nature of the action, which if it had been allowed to go forward, it already had required the judges to retain personal counsel. Very unusual for a judge to have to do that. It had already caused that mass recusal in which they had to bring in a judge from Virginia. The judges might have been forced to submit to depositions under oath about private discussions with other judges. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, might also have been forced to sit for depositions. And then he said this would just be the prelude to all of the novel immunity theories that would be flying in both directions, might have to be worked out on a fact-specific basis. So he said this would be an enormous saga of needless constitutional litigation disrupting two branches of government. He said it would have been so easy for you to use the two acknowledged straightforward ways to challenge a standing order of this sort. One of them is wait until it affects a particular case, which it has already done probably dozens of times, and then use that as part of your group of issues on appeal to go to the Fourth Circuit, which takes appeals from the District of Maryland. There's a second way spelled out by Congress for challenging standing orders at the district court level. There is this advisory committee for each district court.
The reason why the Trump administration is upset with the district court in Maryland in the first place is because the district court issued the standing order, which is a 2-day hold on deportations until the deportees get a hearing and the case can, at least the judges can read what the documents are. And they didn't want to do that, the administration. However, the Fourth Circuit, to which they are going to appeal to now, has exactly the same policy.
Not only does it have the same policy, it's had it a lot longer, and it has a 14-day automatic hold rather than a 2-day automatic hold. In the case of Maryland, it became a necessity for them. Remember earlier this year when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that challenges to deportation couldn't proceed through citing other laws but had to go through habeas corpus. But that meant, of course, that there was a flood of habeas corpus actions, and the judges suddenly found themselves with lots and lots of, they said, okay, this 2-day hold, even if there can't be a hearing, we can look at the initial documents, we can decide whether a longer stay is needed.
Walter Olson, thank you. The city of Baltimore won a jury award in circuit court for $62 million against Anne Arundel County gun dealer Hanover Armory for illegally selling ghost guns that spread in the city. The city had sued the dealer and the ghost gun manufacturer, Polymer 80, in 2022, following a state law banning disassembled and unserialized gun kits that were then put together by buyers. While the manufacturer, Polymer 80, settled with the city for $1.2 million and went out of business, Hanover Armory has fought the lawsuit since they also sell guns made by other manufacturers which are not banned. The jury award can be reviewed by a judge. Last year, a $266 million jury award won by the city of Baltimore against opioid manufacturers that was slated for review was settled by the city for $152 million rather than going back to court. Hanover Armory told the Daily Record newspaper that it will appeal the award.
Damn the man, save the empire. Damn the man, save the empire.
The Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project is a proposed new high voltage power transmission line between Baltimore and Frederick that is the object of intense local protest in Baltimore, Carroll, and Frederick counties because of land use and potentially higher electricity rates in Maryland for enabling the supply of energy to the nearly 200 data centers in Loudoun County, Virginia. Permission for transmission projects is largely a federal matter, and the project is moving forward with the New Jersey-based contractor PSEG. The state of Maryland, acting through its Public Service Commission, has some control over the process because it needs to issue a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, CPCN, to the project before construction can begin. The CPCN process can determine the best path for the power line to take. Usually, this period of review is set by agreement between the contractor and the Public Service Commission, PSC. The contractor, PSEG, has proposed the review end in 2026, but the staff of the Power Plant Research Program in the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, which serves as PSC staff for the review, has said that it'll likely take a year longer. The PSC is expected to issue an order consistent with staff recommendations. The delay is a small effort on the part of the state to assert control over a federal process. Governor Wes Moore has said that the transmission line does not take into account local concerns, but he is also keen to bring data centers to his own state. The PSC is expected to issue a ruling soon. In Northern Virginia, a project connecting 68 rain gauges seeks to improve rescue operations and land use planning. Nora Jackson is a resilience planner with Northern Virginia Regional Commission and serves as the project manager.
We have leveraged the work that some of the really great counties and cities and towns in our region have done in putting in their own gauges and networks in order to measure and monitor the crazy amount of rain that we have been getting in this region the past couple of years. We were able to connect all of those and put them up on a public site, and so that people can view them in near real time. So that means that the rain gauges are recording how much rain falls every 5 minutes and reporting that.
Why are these rain gauges important in the first place?
When you think about a rainstorm coming in the summer, how they always seem to hit in the afternoon and those really, really intense downbursts of rain, you can find that it rains several inches in under an hour, 1 mile away. And one other place, it's not going to get that same amount. Previously, precipitation has been recorded with one gauge that is representative of an entire region, which of course has varying topography, varying stormwater management system, and levels of development, so impervious surface and things that like to absorb heat during the day. One of the things that we know warm air does is it holds more moisture, which means that that's going to come out in rainfall. And so putting more precipitation gauges out in a much more dense network allows planners and engineers and emergency managers to get a better idea of how much rain is actually falling on the ground. Very much learning that it does vary very much from locality to locality and from neighborhood to neighborhood. And so previously using one gauge centered at Dulles Airport to base off of, planning and engineering designs is not really representative of what we're seeing happen on the ground.
So fine-grained planning tool.
Yeah, originally this was actually built for emergency management purposes. And so the platform, they're really seeing emergency managers are seeing roads getting flooded and roads getting closed and having to perform swift water rescues for people that think that they can drive through them. And really that's coming from these really intense, brief, like rainfall, cloud bursts, you can call them. And so this platform is really intended for hazard management on a private side, but we were able to make it public. And that's being able to share that information is where we feel it is most powerful.
How do they use it, though? Rain's falling. Do they avoid those roads? Do they send more rescue there? How does it work?
They can use this system to help with an early flood warning notification system. You can set thresholds in this portal online to say that when this gauge records 0.25 inches of rain, we know or we can expect this stream or this road to behave or react in a certain way. And so being able to measure and look at those over time, they can set thresholds and then set alarms and alerts to those thresholds that send you, again, in that near real time. That 5 minutes is much more valuable when it comes to a short 30-minute downburst than getting a report every hour.
Is there a calculation you make to get to the runoff point? So I understand how much the gauges count, measure the rain.
Yeah.
And then, so
there's another gauge. Yeah. They have another gauge usually on the streams that's their flow or their stage gauge. And so that's how you're looking at that kind of hydrograph, that response. So you can see how much rain falls and then look at the response, on the actual flood gauge. And that's what's really cool with this platform is that if you wanted to, you could literally pull in the time record of the rain gauge and just put it on top of a graph of the flow or the stage gauge.
Are both the stormwater gauge and the rain gauge on your public website now?
Not all of them, but we are working on it. The first priority was to get the rain gauge information out there because that was not as available. Previously, you could find a lot of the stage or flow gauges through the National Weather Service, NOAA, USGS. And so we have some of the localities on there. We have the City of Alexandria's because they also have a public portal that they built. And this is what we modeled ours after, where they made their rain gauges and flow gauges available to the public. For flood awareness purposes. And so we have the City of Alexandria's, we have several USGS gauges, and we are working on adding the rest over the next couple of months. They're just being calibrated and updated. There is some mix of different technologies involved. They're not all necessarily the same type or the same company.
So now the public can tell if a built-up area has more stormwater flow as opposed to a not so built up area, and they can see the difference?
We are noticing a change, especially because you can see this at a regional scale, and it's showing some of the radar. So there's a bunch of different radar layers that you can pull in as well, and you can kind of see how the storm moves across as it goes from west to east, and it will sit on top of something like the City of Alexandria, which we know is incredibly impervious and has a lot of material that likes to absorb heat during the day and then release it later in the day. And so when we're talking about heat islands, we're not just talking about extreme heat. Those are kind of contributing to those cloudbursts as well. And so that's another reason that this has been really interesting, is to kind of see the patterns of the storms as they're coming through and where the rain is really kind of settling and sitting.
It's like micro weather.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the storm moving via the rain gauges, how does the public use that information then?
The real goal of this platform was by making it public, meaning making it more available and spreading the word about it. So one of the results from this was, when we released it, was that I had someone who worked in land development services, in one of the counties, who said, "This is really great. Like, I could use this when we have to inspect construction sites when it rains 0.25 inches. I was like, we can set up an alert for that. But of course, it's a little bit of an extra work to go through us. Why don't we just set him up directly with his county? That was something the county has already had these gauges, but they didn't know in that other office that this was something that they could actually use. So making something like this publicly available is really, it's not just for, the public necessarily. It's also for everyone who works in this industry. And so to kind of help us all work together so that we're not working independently, there's a lot that we can learn from each other when it comes to installing the gauges, maintaining the gauges, making sure that, neighbors are not putting one in too close to each other, things like that. So that's where I really see the benefit and power of it being public.
What do they cost? The gauges and the coordination, what is involved?
A rain gauge, it's like a tipping bucket. I want to say like $10K, maybe, give or take. But then
that's a lot. I measure rain in a measuring cup.
Yeah. But in order for this to have, you have to have it be on, a network so that it can actually send it back to the portal. And then, of course, it has battery and backup and everything. And they also need a lot of TLC. They take a lot of maintenance because a lot of stuff there's like detritus and debris, birds' nests, whatever stuff can kind of get trapped in those tipping buckets. And so they do need a lot of maintenance.
Is there any citizen science involved, or is it just mainly agencies running these gauges?
It is at this point. But I think this opens the doors for a lot of opportunities to connect with the public when it comes to collecting this type of information. We do know that there are programs like COCO-RAS, which is like a National Weather Service citizen monitoring program. We've also had some like National Weather Service, like spotter trainings have been held in like Fairfax County, for example.
Have you seen interest to expand it to the Washington, D.C. region?
Yes, we have seen interest in that. And we are going to be looking to work on that through our partners at MWCOG. And that's, again, I think most interesting because the way that the storm patterns are moving, it's coming across and then, again, come through DC and then on into Maryland. And we did set up the platform through a data sharing agreement with Metropolitan Washington Coalition of Governments. So we are ready if people have gauges already set in those areas, we would probably be pretty easily able to go ahead and add them to our system.
Nora Jackson, thank you. That seems like a very cool project.
Well, thank you so much for letting me boast about it for a while.
Ariella Ajangba Baker is a rising senior at Williamsport High School in Washington County, Maryland. This summer, she interned at I Hate Politics, researching construction fees in the DMV region.
I found information for the DC metropolitan area, which includes DC, parts of Maryland, and parts of Virginia. In Maryland, the jurisdictions I found information for resided primarily in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, or Frederick County. In Virginia, I found information for Northern Virginia, which included Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Falls Church, and Prince Williams County. Most of these were classified as suburban, but the urban areas of DC and Arlington were also included. To find the construction fee information, I used each jurisdiction's planning department, which listed their fiscal year 25 fee schedule. If a jurisdiction didn't have a planning department, I used a similar department that held their fiscal year 2025 fee schedule. I then added all of the information to the spreadsheet and confirmed the data with phone call or email.
Where are construction fees levied by the government lowest and highest?
Construction costs are highest in Washington, D.C., the city of Bowie in Maryland, the city of Manassas in Virginia, and the city of Alexandria in Virginia. They are cheapest in Laurel, Maryland, and Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Very interesting. So in high-rent Montgomery County, Gaithersburg still remains quite cheap.
Mm-hmm.
What impacts construction fees based on your research?
It seems that density and construction fees go hand in hand, as areas with higher population to land space ratios or more urban areas tend to have higher construction fees. This makes sense because these areas have a higher demand for living, so there are lots of apartments to meet this demand. Because of stricter fire codes and heavier fees, such as higher impact and stormwater taxes, apartments are more expensive to construct. For example, DC is at the top of the list in overall construction fees. According to their planning department, they have a construction fee of 0.003 cents per square foot and a permit cost of 3.5% of the construction fee. According to the national census, they house about 11,488 people per square mile. According to their fiscal year 25 fee schedule, Laurel has no construction fee and a $40 annual permit fee. According to the national census, they only house 6,835 people per square mile and are located on the border of Prince George's and Howard County. In the middle are jurisdictions such as Tacoma Park, which according to the national census houses 8,312 people per square mile. Their permit application is $270, and then 1.45% of the total construction cost, or 0.35 cents per square foot, whichever one is greater.
Do any jurisdictions offer incentives or fee reductions for green buildings?
In DC, construction fees lower from 0.003 cents for regular construction to $0.0002 per square foot for green construction. Green construction includes being efficient with energy use and resources. Notably, for apartments, each unit uses on average less than half of the amount of energy of people living in a single-family home. This means apartments are more likely to qualify. So by contrast, building apartments is incentivized. DC, however, is currently the only jurisdiction with this opportunity.
Are there hidden fees that may cause developers to underestimate costs?
Yes, the widely known property tax comes after construction, but there are taxes on top of this and labor and material costs. For example, according to their respective planning departments, Frederick County charges $503 to go over a sewage plan for new construction, and Montgomery County charges $2,990.35 for sewage systems in new construction. These fees may be necessary to new construction, but can add up to thousands of dollars to construction costs that developers may not have accounted for.
What are some notable post-construction costs that impact the cost of homes that we actually live in afterward?
Property tax, which most homeowners are familiar with, is the largest source of revenue for local governments to fund amenities. Something interesting is that based on their fiscal year 25 fee schedule, College Park, Maryland raises property tax from $30.18 for single-family projects to $33.18 per $100 for multifamily projects. On top of this, apartments are subject to higher impact fees such as stormwater tax. This makes them extremely expensive to construct. However, once you divide these costs across units or the amount of families living in a single apartment building, living in an apartment becomes cheaper than living in a single family home because the cost is distributed.
Where can listeners find information that you have collected this summer?
The chart housing all this information will be available on the I Hate Politics socials and website.
Ariella, thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
Stella's a strange and special girl, oblivious in her own world, a ray of sunshine each new day. She likes to hang around the house, sleep through the whole day on the couch, doesn't do much and that's okay.
That's all for this episode. Be sure to check out our feature interview series that come out Friday mornings. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Dear Daria, a Washington, D.C. power pop indie rock band. Mary Jo Matea on vocals, guitar, and keys. Joshua Hunter on guitar. Eamon Donnelly on bass. And Dan ABH on drums. You can find their music at deardariaband.com. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.